I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. So if we'd start by standing for a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Jamie Girardi.
Here.
Mr. Derek Motlett.
Here.
Mr. Peter Hansel. Mr. John Moody.
Here.
Mr. Christopher Poole. Mr. Richard Tonello.
Here.
And Chairman Charles Gray.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, and the proof of publication, please.
The items were advertised in the Tampa Bay Times on November 1st, 2023 and November 8th, 2023.
All right, very good. So, do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Motion to approve the minutes from the September 21st meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, so I'm going to go through the procedures that we follow, but before we do, I'd like to take a moment and ask anyone who plans to give testimony today to stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn, please. If you plan to come up and speak.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody today. We're the Planning Commission, and we're appointed by the county commissioners. We meet twice a month. We serve as a local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. Anyone is in opposition to any development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the Board of County Commissioner meeting. We have those dates available if you don't know what they are. For those of you who are not familiar with the content of our meetings, we have 3 sections: continuances, consent, and regular items. It's been our custom to grant continuances where it's been requested by the staff or the applicant, unless there are extenuating circumstances. But then we'll go through the consent items one at a time. If you hear something read off on consent and you'd like to have it discussed today, raise your hand and we'll pull it from consent for discussion today. The items that are on consent are there because we haven't received any objections from anybody in the community to this date. Then we have the regular items, and those are the items that will be fully heard and discussed today. The applicants will come up and make their presentation. They'll have 3 minutes to make their presentation, and then the respondents or the questioners will have 3 minutes to ask their questions. Once the questions are asked, then the applicant will have 5 minutes to respond to those questions, unless we extend it for some reason. If anybody has requested additional time, at least 24 hours prior to this meeting in writing, they may be granted extra time, although I'm not aware of any that have requested extra time.
Mr. Chair, we have no requests for additional time.
Okay. So for anybody who's in the audience today, if you have a phone or anything that makes a noise, please put it on the silent position before we get started so you don't interrupt anyone. And we would ask you to direct any comments or questions you have to the board directly or to the rather than to the person. And we'll try to make sure that we get your answers for you. Before we start the meeting, is there anybody here that wants to speak on something and it's not on today's agenda? Okay, I don't see anyone. That being the case, I guess we can get started.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members. Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. We're going to start with item PC2, which is PDD 247711 in the name of Next Metro IDS Corbett MPUD. It's a request to continue the item to the December 7th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay. All right, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? Okay, I see no objections. Let's go to the next one.
Following item is PC3, it's PDD 247698, Next Metro Little and Ross MPUD Master Plan Unit Development. It is a correction for the date of continuance. It should be, the continuance date should be to the January 18th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Newport Richey.
All right, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no one?
PC4 is PD 240060. You're sitting as a local planning agency on that one. CPAS 2233, Next Metro Corbett IDS property. The request is to continue the item to the local planning agency meeting of 12/7 of 23 at 1:30 in Dade City.
Anyone here to speak on this one? I see no one. It's, what date is it again?
12/7.
12/7?
Thank you.
Dade City, okay. All right,
PC5 is PDD 240023, Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment. That one you're also sitting as a local planning agency on. CPAS 2223, Pine Ridge Little Ross. The request is to continue the item to the 1/18/24, sorry about that, maybe I'm saying the wrong date. 1/18/24 local planning agency meeting at 1:30 in Newport Richey.
okay. Anyone here to speak on this one? Okay. That's the last one?
That was the last continuance item.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to continue items PC2, PC3, PC4, and PC5 to their respective continuance dates.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Okay, motion carries.
Following item is PC6, which is PDD 247746. It's a zoning amendment in the name of Pasco Pipe Supply, Inc. It's for a change in zoning from an R2 low-density residential district to a C2 general commercial district. Comes to you with a voluntarily agreed-upon deed restriction that reserving the uses for C2 general commercial district uses, and also providing for a 30-foot wide ingress and egress easement from the parcel adjacent to the west for access. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
All right, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? To the applicant? I'm sorry.
Well, two,
You're with the
somebody over
applicant?
here that represents that they were, the applicant too? Yes. Okay,
Okay.
we're just not sitting together.
That's a bad sign. All right. Is there anyone here to object? See no one?
And for the record, I have no one signed up to speak on the item on WebEx.
Okay, great. Next.
PC7 is PDD 247745. It's State Road 52 Industrial LLC, which is a change in zoning from an I1 Light Industrial Park District and C2 General Commercial District to a C2 General Commercial District with voluntarily agreed-upon deed restrictions on both the C2 and the I1 portion of the property as included in your agenda packet. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
All right, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no one? Okay,
Following item is PC8. That is PDD 247748. It's a special exception in the name of Esther School, Inc. Special exception for a private school in an R4 high-density residential district. I do have to read a correction into record, and that has been sent to the clerk's office. In the bottom of the agenda memo, there should be a distribution section, which says, "Board records to distribute as set forth below. One, retain one original for the record." So that's the correction that I have to read into record. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
And is the applicant present? Okay, anyone here to object? See no objections?
And that concludes your consent agenda.
All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, including PC6, PC7, and PC8.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? Not all signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay,
So we're going to move on to P9. If my colleagues would please bring up the PowerPoint for the item. P9 is PDD 24CU03. It's for conditional use for a 155-foot above-ground level monopine wireless communications facility in an AR agricultural residential district. The name is Joan E. Patterson, AnthemNet, Inc., Verizon Wireless. The current zoning on the property is AR agricultural residential district. The future land use classification is Res 3, residential 3 dwelling units per gross acre. The proposal is for a 155-foot above ground level, which is basically a 150-foot wireless communication facility with a 5-foot lightning rod, monopine, suitable for the co-location of 3 additional carriers that is located within a proposed 2,500 square foot fence compound area. The overall parcel is 20 acres. It's located on the east side of the terminus of Roland Drive, approximately 600 feet north of Balo. Location is in southwest Pasco County, as shown on the location map, within a mile of Hillsborough County. The current zoning on the property is AR. It's surrounded by RMH, R1MH, R1MH to the south, and R1MH to the west. And surrounding the area is Geneva Lake and Mineola Lake, or Lake Mineola, Lake Geneva. The current future land use on the property and the surrounding properties is Res 3, 3 dwelling units per gross acre. Access to the overall site is from Roland Drive, which is a privately maintained residential road that has 50 feet of right-of-way. And access to the compound lease area will be proposed through a 20-foot wide access and utility easement, which is located off of Roland Drive. This is the yellow dot is basically the proposed, I guess this doesn't work, proposed location of the monopine. This is the general site plan showing where it will be located on the parcel. This is basically showing that it's going to be a monopine type tower and the compound area. Here are a few photo simulations, which include the map key as to where those photo simulations were taken. The first photo simulation, the left depicts before conditions, so without the monopine. The right depicts the after conditions with the monopine. This particular one was taken from the north, State Road 54, looking south onto the property. This next one was taken from east on State Road 54, looking west. This one was looking from Balo Road. Again, the left is without, the right is with. This one is looking from Roland Drive. And this comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet. I do want to mention that there is a specific maintenance condition included in the approval that basically states what would happen if any of the fronds or whatever would fall from the monopine.
okay.
And I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Okay, anybody have questions for Denise? Okay. Is the applicant present? So as the applicant or anybody that has questions about it, and when you come up, just give us your full name and your address.
Need to be sworn?
Yeah, they've already been sworn. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mary Solik, 121 South Orange Avenue, Suite 1500, Orlando, Florida. I am legal counsel for AnthemNet, who is the co-applicant on this particular application. I'm glad you've mentioned swearing in, because I know there are a number of citizens in the audience today to speak to this item, and I noted that I don't think any of them stood up to be sworn, so you might want to go over that again. Your staff has done a very thorough presentation of this particular application, but I had one additional graphic I wanted to use, and the spotlight there is not helping me, but this particular 155-foot monopine is on a 20-acre tract of land. It is the largest piece of property in this area. We were very fortunate that we were able to find a property of this size to locate the tower on. The size of the property and the heavy tree canopy on the property helps buffer and screen this tower from off-site views. We have the tower centered almost as, it's as centered as we can get it on the particular location. It would be centered in the middle, but for the wetland area. We have had a wetland survey done, and the location of the tower is not in a wetland area, and we meet the 25-foot wetland setback as required by your code. And then again, the bottom portion of that oh, thank you. Yes. The bottom portion of that picture is just another elevation view of the monopine tower. Again, we're utilizing a mitigated approach for this particular area. As you know, towers are permitted either as a permitted or conditional use in all of your zoning categories in Pasco County, and we meet all of the requirements of your code for an approval. I would like to reserve time or come back up and address citizen commentary. I have with me today Bill Compton, who is with Verizon. If you have issues or questions about the need for the tower, that's been reviewed by your outside consultant. And Jennifer Frost is here too. She's the project manager from AnthemNet, if you have any issue or questions about the siting or the location of the tower. Do you have any other questions for me?
Any questions from up here?
At the moment.
Yeah, well, you'll have, as I said at the very beginning, you'll have a 5-minute opportunity to respond at the end.
Okay.
And so let's find out what the questions are, and then we'll.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do I need to sign it?
All right, who's here to ask questions about this particular application? Is there a sheet that we can call people up?
Yes, we have a few folks signed up to speak. The first person is Nick Zumas, followed by Linda Schubert, and then after that, James Cassidy.
Okay, so you're Nick Schubert?
Nick Jumas.
Jumas.
Yes, sir.
And you've been sworn, Nick?
No, I haven't. I'm not used to being sworn in for public comment, but I
Well,
guess
that's what
y'all's
we need.
procedure is a little
Okay, so if
different.
you'll raise your right hand
You
and
want to do
Do
everybody?
you want to
raise
raise
it
it
there?
there?
anyone.
There's a group of them back there.
Yeah,
that I know
anyone who
wanna
has
speak.
not been sworn, you'll need to be sworn or we won't take your testimony.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Raise your right hand, please.
I do.
All right. Did you get that, everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, it's important because we can't take your testimony without it. Okay, thank you.
I live at 1831 Dennison Road. I'm here today to oppose agenda item P9, which is the cell phone tower. I just want to point out that the private part of Roland Road, which is where this tower is going, you do not have 50 foot of right-of-way. It's a single lane. So a lot of factual inaccuracies that were just given in her report. I asked AnthemNet to provide images of what this tower would look like in all high visibility areas on October 20th by email. They ignored me. And the reason why they ignored me is because all the images that you just saw are low visibility areas. Let me tell you about our neighborhood. We have dirt roads. We pay in our own blood, sweat, and tears to maintain our roads when people destroy them, which they do on a daily basis. We have no sewers. We have no county water. We have no fire hydrants. We have persistent flooding problems. At many points in time, our roads have been inaccessible to emergency vehicles. We have code enforcement violations everywhere. We have derelict and abandoned buildings. We have issues that government is better suited to solve, yet we are abandoned by our government so that we may solve our problems on our own. We want to protect our community. We want to protect our lakes. We want to improve our neighborhood. Our neighborhood has many issues, many priorities. A cell phone tower is not one of them. If this project proceeds, there's a couple issues of note. Number one, the Patterson property has an illegal second residence on it. It's zoned AR. Every residence under AR needs to be on its own property, separately apportioned. Number two, the proposed tower is a fake pine tree which will shed plastics into a protected swamp and waterway. If you're going to put this tower there, which we do not want this tower, do not put a monopine plastic tower that's going to pollute our waterways. I question the planning decisions being made in Pasco County. Our county is riddled with planning nightmares, like the Lowe's at 54 and Gun Highway that's going to create a traffic Armageddon for our Odessa community. I urge this board to alter its thinking on planning in Pasco County.
Excuse me for a minute. We're here to talk about a specific project, and that's what we want to hear you talk about.
Well, I'm here to talk about
We're
the
not
project
here
and
to-
planning in general.
We're
I'm
not here
talking,
to talk
this is a
about
planning
in
commission
general.
meeting, is it not? I'm talking about
I
planning.
gave you an opportunity at the beginning of this meeting to speak about anything that was not on today's agenda. That's when you should have brought those things up. Let's
I
focus on
urge
the
you,
item
sir, to
that we're
alter
talking
your
about.
thinking on strategic planning in
I
this
urge
county,
you to
because
pay
this board
attention
has
to the
made
rules.
numerous blunders.
We're operating under certain rules. You're going to follow them.
I'm discussing planning. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
You don't know, I'm not man, okay?
Well, how would you like
Talk
to be
about
addressed?
man. If we're going to have an issue, I can deal with it.
I urge you to exercise due care and
You think
respect
you're
in
getting
decision.
anywhere
Can you
by it?
stop interrupting me, or am I going to have my time reset?
Yeah, no, I'm not, you're not going to have your time reset.
So you
You're gonna
can just
follow the
interrupt
rules.
anybody you want, because you disagree with how I'm speaking right now. You
I
don't like my
disagree
tone or
with
what
the
I have to say.
content
You're going
of
to
what
stand
you're
here and
saying.
interrupt me.
Yeah, sir,
Not thinking that's gonna work
Yeah.
out well for you.
please come forward.
Thank you for your time. You guys have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, I can tell you're a real genius yourself.
Thank you, sir.
You guys fuck up this county every day.
Thank
Excuse
you,
me.
thank you very much. You can leave the room. All right, who's next?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Next is Linda Schubert.
Reading too much Facebook.
Yes, my name is Linda Schubart.
Yeah, can you pull that down a little bit, Linda?
Yeah.
I'm short.
That's okay.
Here we go.
Sorry. We just need your,
I thank
we
you.
just need your name and address, Linda.
Linda Schubart, 1829 Roland Drive.
Okay?
And the only thing that I'm worried about is, I know it's all private land back there, and it's a single Lime Rock Road. Are they gonna be, like, bringing semi-trucks? It's right in front of my house. We're the closest, us and Butch.
Right.
And I'm only at, like, less than 400 feet. But I know the woman, it isn't 20 acres, it's only 10, because my husband's lived here since 1969, so he knows that she sold 10. So they have 10 acres of unsellable land,
Right.
which is fine, but, I mean, they have to keep bringing in concrete trucks and semi-trucks on my road. I mean, I'm getting kind of scared. It's like, I can barely ride the road as it is because it's all lime rock and they don't take care of it, obviously. What will happen after, all the semi-trucks and all that goes in? That's all. I was just,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
kind of worried
reasonable.
about that.
That's a reasonable request. What we'll do is make sure that they address that when they come back up, because they'll have in mind, what it's gonna take to establish the pole, and then how often they'll have to be there to maintain it.
I'm not sure about the laws of the private land. I know my daughter was handicapped and they couldn't come pick her up because it was in private land, and the fire trucks can't come through. They have to bring water tankers, but yet they can build a cell phone tower. So I'm just kind of confused, that's all.
Okay. Well, we'll
Okay,
try to get
thank
you some
you.
answers, and appreciate you coming.
Next person is James Cassidy, followed by, I'm going to kill this because the last name, Sharon Sokier? Sukiel, thank you.
Pretty close. All right, sorry. Name and address?
Good afternoon. My name is James Tyler Cassidy. I'm a living, breathing man with a soul given to me from God. I am not a citizen, but an American state national whose vessel is foreign to the United States of America and state of Florida corporations. I'm here to speak on item P9. First off, I appreciate your time, guys. I know you guys have a job to do and decisions to make. I'm not here to roast you guys.
Sir, did we get your address? I don't think.
Yes, I'll give that to you.
Yeah.
14720 Bluestone Lane. If you'd like, if you could pull up that square with all the addresses, I'd love that.
I think we can
A
do
little
that.
more in-depth one. That'd be great if you could. Anyway, I'm not here to roast you guys. My mom always said you catch more flies with honey. I respectfully ask that this board deny AnthemNet and their plans to build. Pick the people over the companies. I do not give the company AnthemNet permission to build a structure that would house antennas that would repeatedly send signals into, over, and onto my property. This is my official notice to cease and desist your plans for installing a wireless communications tower nearby my real property located at 14720 Bluestone Lane in Odessa, Florida. I know how this works. You guys are being pushed to develop this city, to see to its future. I assure you, placing environmental poisons upon the people who live nearby there is not in the city's or this council's best interest, and it certainly isn't in mine. This board should not approve any further actions or planning of this project. The approval of this project will put men and women's health at risk, including my own. The approval of this project will negatively impact plant life in the local area, including over 100 fruit trees I've spent years cultivating, obtaining, planting, and nurturing. Upon search for private property in 2019, I came upon the property I have now. I've put thousands of hours of labor and tens of thousands of dollars worth of fruit trees and plants which now stand to be negatively impacted by the installation of this proposed tower. Plants have been shown to be negatively affected by RF radiation. The millimeter waves produced by these 5G towers continue to slow the growth, lower the immunity, and in some instances visibly brown normally green leaves, hindering the growth of plants and oftentimes killing them. The trees next to the 5G tower located near the church in East Lake near Keystone Road are constantly being killed and replaced. A Swedish study recently found that a tower even smaller than the one this company is proposing would raise the radiation from roughly 9 milliwatts per square meter currently to 1,690 milliwatts per square meter, high enough for both acute and long-term effects on a living, breathing man.
Keep going.
How do you plan to guarantee my safety? You have no right to jeopardize my health that I've worked so hard to obtain and maintain. I owned a group fitness gym business for almost 9 years where I was responsible for assisting thousands of people in their health and fitness journeys. I've acquired over 10,000 hours of work and study in the health and fitness field, including many studies on the effects of wireless radiation on the health of a man or a woman. So I ask also, how does this company plan to compensate us for the health of our plants and the time spent building our properties, our food forests, and our own health? How do you plan to keep our dogs and animals safe while proposing a tower that will produce large amounts of microwave radiation? How do you plan to compensate all of us for the loss of value in our property directly from the installation of this tower? Again, I do not consent to this. Cease and desist. Thank you for your
All
time.
right, thank you. Any questions?
I just want to know if he owned a cell phone.
I actually sold cell phones for 5 and 6 years, and I have extensive knowledge with that as well. I try to keep my phone off in an airplane mode as much as I can, so I do not have lasers, essentially, right? Because these things aren't powered by a connection, but they get connection, right? Those things are going to be shooting right over my property. This is literally right across the street from where I live. My mom lives on my property. This was life by design. I bought that property specifically because it had a mobile home on it, and it had a block home in the back. I put my mom in the front, me in the back.
Your time's up. You need to just answer the question, which is, I think the question was, do you own a cell phone?
Do I own a cell phone? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Who's next?
Ms. Zukiel, followed by Walter Schubart, and then James Harrell or Harnell, I'm not sure.
Hi, my name is Sharon Sukiel. I live at 2007 Is there something wrong?
Just pull that down so we can hear you better.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it just does that.
There we go.
Okay, my name is Sharon Sukil. I live at 2007 Chesapeake Drive, Odessa, Florida. I've been living here for 22 years. It was a beautiful place when I moved here. 54 wasn't a 6-lane highway back then. Well, I also worked for the county for 10 years, so I actually loved working for the county. But in the last 10 years since I left the county, it has gone downhill. It doesn't listen to its citizens. Citizens can talk until they're blue in the face, and everybody listens, and nobody does anything. There's no action, okay? There's a location for the cell tower, okay? It's right next to the location where the last cell tower was that somebody decided to take down because they wanted to develop the property, okay? That is Catherine Starkey. This is her district. She likes ruining things that are already set in stone, okay? This community has been there for 100 years. Some of those houses are actually 100 years old, okay? There's historic buildings over there that everybody ignores. You took Renatos and you destroyed it and made a parking lot out of it, okay? But anyway, so there's a suggestion. There's better places. Residential areas are not for cell phones. They say you look it up online. Should you put a cell phone in a residential area? They say you should keep it as far away from a residential area as possible. Look it up yourself. Okay, you don't put cell phones in residential areas unless you want kids with 6 eyes to 20 years from now, or 3 legs. Okay, you just don't do it. And you people who won't be here in 20 years when the people over there come back and say, why are my kids being born with disabilities? Okay? Yes, I have a cell phone. I hate the cell phone, but you have no choice because that's progress. Okay? But you don't have to ruin some place that's already okay. We have Black Lake, which is ruined. Okay? It has no life in it. It's black. Literally black. There's no oxygen. There's no life in it. Nobody wants to come and help this little lake get live again. They want to put a 400-room hotel or 350-room hotel right next to it so they can look at the dead lake. Your planning is just absurd. You created Black Lake so you could straighten out 54, and now we have a dead end, a Black Lake cul-de-sac. You know what it is? It's free parking for all the trailer trucks that live in the neighborhoods that can't put their trucks in there.
Ma'am, the chairman's already warned the prior speaker that you need to confine your comments to the application under review, which is
The application is, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a cell phone that's being put in the middle of a residential area. You do put them there. You put them in, why somewhere on 54? You've got how many? 50,000 car washes. You can't put a cell tower in someplace? You got fast food restaurants. Every other place is a fast food restaurant, a bank, and a car wash. We don't want it. You people are planning and designing things for people that don't want it. You're putting in exquisite, okay, a planning development, okay, on 54. Where are all those houses you're going to shove in there behind the Lowe's? You people are poor planners, and this is outrageous to put a cell tower in the middle of a very lovely neighborhood. Fake as it is, we don't want it. Thank you.
So I'd like to remind the Planning Commission that you cannot consider health, environmental effects, radio frequency emissions, any of those issues as part of your consideration of the cell tower. We are preempted by the FCC as long as they comply with FCC regulations. Your role is primarily to look at potential infrastructure impacts, aesthetic impacts, but you cannot consider whether this might have adverse health effects or adverse environmental effects. That's very clear under federal law, and it's very clear under our code. Ma'am, I didn't write the law. I'm just telling you.
We can't, I'm sorry, we can't speak from the audience. Thank you.
Ma'am, I'm just telling the Planning Commission what federal law requires.
Who's next, please?
If you have a concern with federal law, you need to be talking to your federal legislators. I'm telling them what federal law requires.
Could you just repeat the last part about the environment, just what you just said?
Federal law says that you cannot, when we're considering whether to approve the cell tower, we cannot consider environmental effects, health effects, or any radio frequency emission effects. And we've already heard testimony from 2 speakers now about potential health effects, radio frequency effects. I want to be clear. This board didn't write this law. I didn't write this law. The Federal Communication Commission preempted our ability to regulate cell towers based on those effects.
Can you clarify that, David, about environmental? As for instance, the applicant is respecting the wetland and the required
Yeah, I
wetland
should say.
buffer.
By
So we're talking about
environmental, I mean
environmental.
from the radio frequency emissions. So for example, we heard testimony that radio frequency emissions may hurt plants, animals, people's health. That would all be preempted to the Federal Communications Commission. I'm only telling you what the law requires. I didn't write this law. It wasn't my idea. Federal government preempted us on that issue. So our role here is limited to, is this an appropriate location from a land use zoning perspective? Is it appropriate from an infrastructure perspective, from an aesthetic perspective? It's not to determine whether it will or will not have adverse health effects.
Okay, let's go. I'm sorry, just a minute. Does anybody have a question for this gentleman? Wait a minute. I can't bring you up unless somebody asks to come up. So, does anybody have a question?
Nope.
Okay. I'll take one question.
All right.
Make it quick.
Because you guys are saying you don't consider the health effects and the plant life and
No,
all
we
that
didn't
stuff.
say
Oh,
that.
that's
We-
okay.
We said
Not allowed
federal
to.
law.
The law.
Yeah.
Not allowed to.
Does the law consider financial loss?
Potentially.
If there is a potential adverse impact on property values, that could be considered.
Okay.
I don't know if we have competent substantial evidence of that, but yes, that is something that this planning commission
Yeah.
could consider.
I've seen it, and I could provide evidence of such things based upon, again, money I've spent and also the value
I'm
of
talking
properties
about-
in the area, right? Values of properties throughout Pasco County that have dropped and not been able to sell because towers are next to it. There's one right on Angel Lane that happened to. It's
So,
a-
again, if
property
you've
that
got
couldn't sell.
competent substantial evidence of that, that is absolutely something that the planning commission can consider.
Okay.
I will be honest
You
with
guys
you.
should.
An anecdotal statement that you may have heard about it
No, I've seen
is
it.
not competent substantial
I said I've
evidence.
seen it.
Okay, but
Right.
usually that would require testimony from an appraiser, actually presenting actual data showing that property values are decreasing as a result of a cell tower. So I haven't seen you present any of that.
Well, I was hoping this board was going to actually deny this, but of course, if it moves forward, then of course I would have to gather exhibits and
So-
spend $400 to open up a case, and it sure won't be in Pasco County.
So we have to be clear, this board can only deny something based on competent substantial evidence. So
Yeah.
any
My
evidence-
statement, I sworn in.
Okay, but you have to have a
You a
certain level
real
of
estate
expertise.
appraiser?
Yeah, are you an appraiser?
No,
Are you a real estate broker?
no.
Then what would qualify you to give us expert testimony as to property values?
Because I have owned both commercial and residential real estate successfully.
Well, I own
I
real
think we all
estate too,
have.
but it
All right,
doesn't
that
qualify me
counts.
to put a value on yours.
Yeah, but I've also searched extensively myself for properties.
So, sir, I've answered your question,
Okay.
which is that it is something.
I'm
that
just
the-
checking, I just wanted you guys to
So
confirm
they-
that.
They can consider effect on property values.
Okay.
If it's based on competent substantial evidence.
Maybe
Alright,
somebody
great.
else will bring something to our attention. Okay? Thank you. We're trying to stay within the confines of what our guidelines were at the beginning of the meeting, when I told you that if you have a question, come up, you've got 3 minutes to state your case, and then the next person, because we want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. So, but we can't have people coming back and forth, back. It's not, this isn't a coffee clutch where we just talk to each other. Unfortunately, we have to do it in an orderly fashion.
And the
So-
reason I made my statement about the health effects is because you all only have 3 minutes, and I want you to make the best use of your time and confine it to those issues that we can actually consider.
Okay? So who's next?
Walter Schubert, followed by James Harrell, Then after that is Michael DeMayo, and the last person signed up to speak is Elizabeth Kelly.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm not here to gripe. I'm just here to say I've lived across the street.
Before you get started, it's Walter, right?
Walter Schubart,
And the-
1829 Roland Drive.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you. Go ahead.
I've lived in this location for 55 years. I raised my kids on the same property where the tower's going. It was, back in the day, I canoed back there. It is wetland. It's right next to the swamp. I'm just here to say, I have almost 400 feet of frontage on a private road that goes right where they're gonna go in. How are they gonna access that being it's a private road?
So we will ask the applicant to address that
And
issue.
we don't want the traffic, you know, you fix the road and then people do 40 miles an hour down a 5-mile-an-hour road. It's a piece of country that's left out there. 54's gone crazy, everybody knows that. Times have changed, but we're trying to save a little piece of heaven back there, and it's just kind of irritating, that's all.
Well, if it is a private road, then we'll see if we can establish that, you know.
I mean, I haven't checked into the private road part of it, but I own from the county, where the county stops, I own all the way to where they're, and I'm just curious, how's that gonna work? Being it's private property, private road.
Okay.
So, sir, we will ask the applicant to address what gives them the right to use Roland, is it Roland Road, is that the one you're talking about?
But,
Roland Drive?
excuse me?
Is it Roland Drive that you're referring to?
Yep,
We will ask the
I
applicant.
have 400 feet of frontage on that road.
So, that comment has been made, and we will definitely ask the applicant to address that.
Okay,
Okay.
because, I mean, what are they gonna do? They're gonna come in and fix the road, or?
Well, if it's private
The
property.
county is not even
Can't
taking
use
care of the road. They come out and patch it here and there, but it's been like this for 50 years.
Well, yeah, but a private road could be used if they've got, if they've got a private right to use it. So I will ask the applicant what gives them, they may have an easement, they may have, I don't know, because we don't, so we'll ask the applicant to
Is
address that.
this something I need to check into and check into a
I mean,
private
if
property
you-
lawyer and
If you think
see?
that the applicant would be trespassing on your property, you have every right to do that, but we will ask the applicant to address that issue. If they don't have legal access to the site, that is a problem. I don't disagree with you, but we're gonna ask the applicant to explain. I suspect they probably do have some legal access, because I don't think they would have leased this site without having legal access to it, but we'll ask the applicant to address it.
Okay. All right, I just wanted I'm here to vote no, that's all I really wanted to say. And thanks for your time, and you guys have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Back when you probably moved out there, I've been here longer than that, and a lot of these developments were platted, but the roads were never accepted by the county, so they're call them private roads, but they're just legal accesses to the lots that are there. So they're private in the sense that the county is not paving them, they're not maintaining them, they're not keeping the right-of-ways. And so if you look at some of the much older developments here, it's like Moon Lake Estates, for example, it's the same thing. It's a large development, lots of lots out there, but very few paved roads, and that's because they were never accepted by the county. And that's maybe what you have here, I don't know, we'll find out.
Well, the other thing I will point out is that it appears there's actually a home on this lot currently. So they must be accessing the lot. I would presume they're accessing their home legally, but we'll find that out.
Right. Okay. So who's the next person?
James Harrell is next.
James, if you give us your full name and address, please.
I got a cell phone.
Well, could you call me, please?
My name's James Harrell, 14615 Middlefield Lane. Just, when she got, I guess the applicant got up and spoke, she talked about the need for that space where they're presently proposing to relocate it. However, when I moved out there in 17, that same tower was on the corner of Black Lake and 54, and it was removed there. And someone alluded to earlier for commercial reasons, so they can do that. So I just have questions for her. Why is the tower being relocated from State Road 54 to our neighborhood? And what is the health implications for the entire community? Was the first question. And also,
So, sir, I'm an instructor to not answer that question about the health, because I've already explained that that's not something this commission can consider. She can answer your first question, but.
okay, that's fine. Whatever, the rules are the rules.
Okay.
Also, historically, has there been a substantial decrease in real estate values? So I live on the other side. It's not directly, I think I'm outside of 500 feet of it from my house. I have little visibility to it, but presently my house praises for some pretty good numbers, from 900 to 1.2. So my question is that, am I going to see a substantial decrease in value? And has there been any studies done by the applicant to address real estate values and decreases? And if so, will the residents be compensated? Number one, so that's kind of what I wanted to know. And besides that, hopefully, I would definitely want to vote no to reject the tower being put in our neighborhood, kind of not in my backyard. So hopefully she can address those questions and we'll move forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, James. And who's next?
Michael DeMayo.
Hi, my
Hi,
name is Mike
Michael.
DeMayo. I live on 14621 Bluestone Lane. Coincidentally enough, right outside of the area where the notices from the county were distributed, I really think we should consider increasing that to allow more residents to know what's going on in the county. This is not the first time that's happened where there's a limit of notification of the surrounding communities. Anyway, I digress. Here to talk about the cell phone tower that is.
Sir, can I ask you, so how did you find out about this meeting?
The posting on Roland, on the corner of Roland, there's a county sign that's been posted.
Oh, the sign.
I saw the sign, but
Okay.
I was not mailed any letters or anything. If you've probably never been back there, the only reason you'd ever go back there is if you live back there. So the only chance people, like a lot of people aren't here today because they don't know about it. They don't see the sign and they weren't notified via mail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm not here to discuss the health effects of having a tower installed. I don't know the health effects. I'm not here to talk about that. It is being installed basically right on top of a residential neighborhood, and I have no idea if there actually are health effects or not. However, a monopine tower has PVC needles. They're made of PVC to make them look like pine trees, right? A 115-foot monopine tower has 10,000 pounds of PVC needles. This is a 155-foot tower being put up, and it's a huge concern that these needles that are installed on the tower are going to deteriorate and fall off the tower into the environment below. We live on a very, very delicate lake system in an environment that's pretty rural, and all the people that live in the area, we're all on well water. If these microplastics shed off the tower and go into the environment below, all that microplastic is leaching into our soil and into our water sources. We're not on city water. A couple solutions I hope you'll recommend. Change the location of the tower. We don't need it, or at least recommend that it's not a good spot for it. This tower is going to be installed in a residential neighborhood. There's going to be people living under this tower. As you can see from the map, those houses are 100 feet from the tower. They're going to have a giant 155-foot tower right above their house. I live on Lake Minneola, which is right to the left, right to the east, or I'm sorry, right to the west of that tower. And, you know, I live about 1,200 feet of where this tower is going to go. We have a lot of concerns about being that close to something like that. Second, change the type of tower from a monopine tower to a standard metal one. I don't know if this is an option, but it would reduce the probability of the PVC pine needles falling down below, washing into our lake system. This is right on 2 lakes. I mean, if these pine needles fall off the tower, it's going right into the water during those summer storms, those hurricanes. We live on a very delicate lake system. Third, reduce the height of the tower to limit visibility to residents. A lot of those shots showing the proposed tower height, if you've been back there, those are pretty selective photos. I don't think they did a very good job of really showing what the tower is going to look like when it's installed. And then lastly, if you are going to allow this proposal to continue, please require some sort of cleanup, a semi-annual cleanup, a rock-solid maintenance plan for this to make sure that these PVC needles are cleaned up when they do deteriorate. And then finally, I'm sorry to go over 2 questions for the commission. What relevance does owning a cell phone have to do with the tower being installed? Our cell service is fine. You know, having a cell phone, everyone has a cell phone. There's no reason to question whether someone has one or not. And then, sir, I'd like to clarify that the road's not being accepted by the county. I just want a little more information on what that means, because we do live on a private road. We maintenance all these ourselves, and we get no help from the county to maintenance all this stuff.
Well, when some of these areas were platted years ago, you know, a lot of these places were set up to be weekend places for people from St. Pete and other places. Mm-hmm. They didn't think about paving the roads then, or if they did, they were very poorly paved.
Yeah.
And the county wouldn't accept them or accept the responsibility to maintain those roads because they weren't paved properly.
And they still don't.
And they still don't. It'd be a huge expense if they did, that they never accepted in the first place. So the people that actually ended up living out there had to, you know, maybe there's a good chance you didn't understand that when you bought your property. And I think that's the case in many of these instances. And I can name a number of developments that have that same situation. I named one, Moon Lake Road. This one is one. Shady Hills is one. I mean, there's a number of them.
Sure.
And so the county has no responsibility. I mean, you can't get mad at the county because the county didn't have any responsibility for them in the first place.
Yeah, yep.
And so what you have to do in order to get the road paved is to do an assessment of the people on your street. And if you can get them to agree, and then the county will come in and pave it. Yeah,
clarify that. Anyway, please just consider, you know, those solutions, any small changes that may help the community if this thing is pushed
through. If we could get rid of the monopine, that would be a big thing. And
I mean, to me, it would.
Like a big concern.
We have hurricane season, we have summer storm season, and we have a blazing hot sun that deteriorates these thin little pine needles, and they just break into small pieces and fall below.
Well, I'm sure the applicant can speak to the durability of them and what their average lifespan is and all that, because they've dealt with these before too. And how that relates to the length of durability of the pole itself, because it's a very good chance that pole may end up being replaced with different technology well before these needles deteriorate. So we'll see from the applicant kind of what the lifespan is and what their plan is for that.
In some of these cases, we've asked the staff or the applicant to poll the residents as to their preference as to the appearance of the tower. In some cases, they've been offered bell towers, flag poles. It's an enclosed canister and then a flag is hung on it, or it could be just a plain galvanized monopole with the antennas visible from the view. What would be your preference?
As far as the aesthetic of it, like what I want it to look like?
I will tell you that I am giving a lot of consideration to your argument about the PVC material making up the pine needles. So then that leaves us with we call that a mitigated tower in our code. A mitigated tower is a tower we try to best disguise as we can so it doesn't look quite like a cell phone tower.
Right.
So they could do an unmitigated design wherein they've just got the antennas up and generally they're in a triangular format up at the top, or they could put it in a canister and then we can hang a flag off of it.
Sure.
So if we were to opt not to have a monopole here, what would your preference be?
I think it would probably be best to pull the residents that are going to be living underneath it because they're going to see it every single day.
Okay.
My mailbox is basically adjacent to this land, and so I'll also see it. If I had a preference, I want something that's not going to deteriorate and affect the environment as much. So I would go with a galvanized, I'm not a cell tower expert, but something where, we're not going to have to worry about cleaning up after it and having it affect our lake systems.
And I'm going to ask the applicant, and I could very well be wrong, but if I were to bet right now without asking her, there was probably some sort of polling already done by the residents, which is why they're proposing the amount of pine.
I would love for them to confirm whether that actually
Right,
happened.
well, and I will ask her that, but because that's generally more expensive design to put up than just an unmitigated pole. And so usually developers only put those up if there's been a request from the residents in nearby area to mitigate that design.
Yeah, and the height of the tower at 155 foot is well above any of the surrounding trees, so it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb compared to everything around it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not generally something we can control because if
Tower
it's not
height is
that
high.
high, then it doesn't do any good to have it, so.
It's certain requirements based on technology.
One last question for you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, John.
You've indicated that the pine needles are PVC. How do you know that?
Research online shows that the pine needles are made of PVC, and it's a thin PVC, kind of like a fake Christmas tree,
No, I
almost.
understand.
Okay.
Okay.
There's any more questions? Thank you very
I
much.
wanted to answer his one last question, though. The point of asking if you owned a cell phone.
Yes,
is
sir.
The point is, we all live in an age where we all own one of these.
Yes, sir.
And I agree with the lady in the back. Yes, we don't have a choice. Yeah, you can get a landline, but the only people that call the landline at my house are phone solicitors, so I never pick it up. Okay, so that's useless. The rest of us all use one of these, and this is one of the unfortunate, problems of life. If we're going to use this technology, then there are going to be towers until some other technology comes along to replace it. So the best we can do is try to figure out how we can locate the towers, decorate the aesthetics of the towers to make something that we can all live with.
Yep.
I don't know how old you are, and I don't want to give my age
turned
away,
37
but back
next
in
week.
the 70s when I was a child, we had all of these big erector set orange and white towers that beamed microwaves all over the place, and that's how a lot of landline phone communication got beamed from place to place.
Television signals.
And so these are a whole lot less obtrusive, yeah, and we had telephone towers that were thousands of feet.
1,500
tall,
feet high, yeah.
Right, so,
I do think the concern would be a lot greater if we didn't have cell service in the area, but our cell service is fine. so
there
it's-
are, whether we like it or we don't, there are many, many new residents to Pasco County. And although the cell service may be fine today, when all of a sudden the capacity on that tower is used up because of all the new homes the folks have cited that are going up in the area, and those people are using their cell phones, and there's more traffic on 54, and those people are driving by using theirs, eventually your cell phone service won't be very good.
Understood.
Because there's no capacity on the tower.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, this is why we're having a hearing today.
Please, please
you
sit
can't speak
down.
from the audience.
You're not having a hearing, you're asking this man about his life, about...
Ma'am, you cannot speak from the audience. You cannot speak, the clerk cannot pick you, you cannot speak from the audience.
So anyway,
Well,
thank
and
you
I
very
actually
much.
appreciate the gentleman's demeanor because he's come up here and he's presented a logical case. He's done it without emotional outburst. And he's actually presented some evidence that has got me thinking about the approval for this tower.
Thank you.
So I applaud you.
All
All
good?
right. Thank you very much. If there's
Thank
no
you, guys.
more
Appreciate it.
questions. Thank you.
Mr.
Amen.
Chair, Elizabeth Kelly is the last person that has signed up to speak on the item.
All right, thank you.
Hello,
Hi. Ms.
Second.
Kelly, if you give us your full name and address, please.
I'm Elizabeth Kelly. I live at 1628 Abyss Drive in Odessa.
Okay, and you've been sworn, right?
I have.
Okay, thank you.
I love Pasco County. I lived here 16 years. Before that, I lived in Tampa. I like Tampa too. My community is this one in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm not right in that neighborhood. I don't have wetlands or anything like that. This is like a planned development. There's about 250 houses in there. And so our views, all of us, is of this property. And right now it's a beautiful canopy of trees, and you can see the birds fly in and out in the morning times and everything like that. And like the last speaker said, this cell phone tower is going to be way taller than all the other trees there. I understand that, you know, they're trying to disguise it as a tree itself, but I've looked online at pictures of other pine tree fake cell towers, and if you put that sticking up above all of the other trees that are there, you're not going to be fooling anybody. It's going to definitely look like not a natural tree and something that doesn't belong there. So aesthetically, myself and my neighbors that I've talked to are very concerned. We're concerned that it won't look good to us, and more importantly, if we need to move, it won't look good to anybody else who would come to see our house and see what, you know, how lovely it is there. And they'll say, oh, your house is pretty good here, but what about that thing? Like, I don't want to live where that's my view. I don't want to wake up in the morning and open the curtains and, oh, there's the cell phone tower, you know. So I think it's important to just talk about the location.
Go ahead, you have another minute.
Someone mentioned there was, or recently, a tower that was right along the highway on 54 that's been taken down. It's my understanding from research online. That's why this one's being built. At that same spot where they took that one down, there's a lot of undeveloped places there for sale, whatever. I'm sure someday there'll be strip malls and everything like that in them. I don't understand why, instead of, or who decides to put this up if it's Verizon. Do they go to the homeowners and knock on the door and say, hey, let's sneak this in your neighborhood because I can get it in there cheaper than buying our own land on the highway where, you know, commercial things all belong. Everybody agrees theoretically, like on the highway, you're going to have that stuff, not in a neighborhood. So I think that they should go ahead, build it on the highway. Just because they can do it doesn't mean they should.
Well, just to let you know, they don't typically buy the land anyway. It's usually leased. So they lease the land. And the reason that it's usually a location is because geographically it has to meet certain criteria, coordinates in terms of being able to communicate. Most towers, I think, if it's the same as it used to be, they're about 8 miles apart. You don't want two towers too close to each other. You don't want them too far because they won't do any good. So that probably has a lot to do with why they chose this location.
It's based on coverage maps and where the population's at and where the radius from that tower that it needs to serve those people. So that a lot of times determines that location, not.
Yeah, I saw that circle, and the old tower was also in that circle. Isn't this I think is like a replacement tower. So
It could be
they
because
could
if
still
they
stay in that area where it was before.
leased that property on 54
Yeah.
and the property sold, they may have been required to move it.
There's a lot, I'm saying there's a lot more properties there. It's not like this is the only spot where they could build a tower in this area. They could stay on the highway. There's a lot of properties there. I think they just
So to be
cost
clear,
more.
though, it has to be a willing landowner that allows it to happen. So this landowner,
Exactly.
they were not forced to put this tower on their property.
I understand.
They're agreeing to do it.
I understand.
So, I mean,
And that, they're your neighbor.
we don't, so we have no way of knowing whether other property owners, including those on 54, are willing to. Apparently, the prior property owner wasn't willing to have a tower on his property anymore because it's gone.
Yeah, because it's, I think, zoned for commercial, so they can just get more money from
Yeah,
somebody
I guess my
else.
point is that these tower companies do not have eminent domain authority. They're not like,
No, they should just pay more to place it in an appropriate location instead of trying to sneak into a neighborhood where it's cheaper.
But the problem is, it's very limited. So there may only be 3, 4, 5 properties within the radius that they need to be in. And if out of those 4 properties, 3 of the owners don't want them on the location, that narrows it down to just one
I
choice.
think if they paid more, they could get in there.
And let me just say that
Possibly, possibly not.
if they were gonna try to sneak into a neighborhood, we wouldn't be sitting here with all these people in the room.
Well-
That's not too sneaky.
Well, I agree also with the comments that notification of this, I mentioned in my HOA meeting last night, I think there was one other person in the whole meeting who had even heard about this. And we're literally that community right there. So, I don't know, someone put this notice like on my car at one point. So I don't know who even put it there, but somebody's
Probably
trying to
that man
just
right in the front right
verbally
there.
spread the word. I don't know, but yeah, I think if more people knew, there would be more people here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to comply with whatever our requirements are to notify and,
Thank
you
you.
know. Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
Very large bulletin that tells everybody when it was going on. So if you didn't get a letter in the mail, you had to see this sign. If you were
ma'am, again, you cannot be speaking from the audience. If you have comments, you can come up and speak, but you can't speak from the audience.
Yeah, she's been up once before.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I do have someone else that just signed up, Heather Cremella.
Heather, you probably haven't been sworn since
I
you
was,
did-
yeah, I was new back there.
Were ya?
I was sworn in, yeah.
Can I trust you?
Yeah. Okay. Gentlemen, just for a moment, I'd like to piggyback on Ms. Kelly's comments. I also live in the same neighborhood, Greyhawk, and we recently purchased, dare I say, overpaid for the home that we live in, and then renovated the house to bring it into, 2023. So I have major concerns with putting a cell phone tower up. I haven't, unfortunately, I'm unprepared with providing, evidence and sorts of packets of things to tell you that property value will drop. And I know from personal experience, while we were looking for houses, there were a number of new constructions with cell phone towers in the back, and we turned around just as quickly as we pulled in there, and it was a major deterrent. So if necessary, I will find someone probably in our community who does real estate that could provide some of that evidence. So I'm just asking, as a homeowner now in Pasco County, I came from St. Pete, and I'm happy to be here. We actually have, I don't know if this can get us any credit, but there's a bald eagle that lives in the lake. I have video evidence of it. We're a pretty community, and I would love to keep that community. I know that you can't take into account the health or the well-being or the children, and that's the law, and that's very unfortunate, but I'm glad that was brought to attention. Again, if you could potentially find a new location for this, it would be appreciated, or consider it, that'd be appreciated. Thanks.
Can you please state your address?
Oh, yeah, sorry. 1718 Lake Polo Drive.
Thank you.
Is there another tower type design you might consider other than the
Truthfully, no.
monopile?
I mean, I guess if it was where you just have no other option that we're going to vote on this, I guess I'd need to take some consideration into it. To be honest, Ms. Kelly, she posted in the HOA meeting last night, and it was a reminder of, hey, and then somebody posted in our group at 1:10 and was like, hey, that meeting's going on, so I jumped in the car, I was 4 minutes late. But there'd be a little bit more consideration, and truthfully, I'm not prepared for this, but it was something where I think about, and this, to be honest, this doesn't affect my view. I look south, we've got lake, I won't see this tower, but for my community and for the people around, I just feel it's not necessarily me, but it's everybody, and then listening to some of the people that live directly in it. So I don't know, Mr. Moody, I would have to do a little bit more research into it. I'm not prepared to answer that.
Well, just so you know, for the
Yeah.
people who did come to speak, have questions about it, this does go to the county commission after this meeting,
Okay.
and so you will have another opportunity.
Okay,
to-
you know, and I saw the little paper too, so I saw
and
that
just-
too.
Just make sure that you have, what I'm trying to tell you is they can't make decisions based on emotion.
Right, got it.
You have to have evidentiary information.
Yeah.
That they can, that they can consider.
Right.
Otherwise, they can't consider it, even if
Got
they
it.
want to consider it.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
While the applicants come up, Patty, can you put up the wetland layer on that map? Because I think that may answer some questions with regard to other available properties in the area.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you for asking for that map. It does help explain why we are where we are. Substantial wetland areas in this community. Much of our search area was encumbered by wetland areas. Much of the 20-acre parent tract on which we're locating this tower has wetlands on it. We're avoiding those. And that's a two-edged sword. It means we can't locate a property on the wetlands, but the wetlands also provide buffering and screening. Those tree canopies aren't going away. And so you won't see this tower from anywhere to the north and to the east because of the heavy tree cover provided by the wetlands. I don't think you'll see it from the residential community the last two speakers came from either. One resident said she wouldn't see it. The photo sim has a view from Ballow Road, which is on the south side of the subject property, and you barely see the very tip of the tower from that viewpoint. I think further south you won't see it at all. So let's go back and address the roadway issues. Can you put my survey map up, please? Commissioner Gray, you are right on the money. This is a 30-foot platted road right-of-way. It is a privately maintained road for most of the length. Some area south of the subject property shows up as county maintained, but most of it in the area is privately maintained. But it is a 30-foot platted right-of-way, which means that's right-of-way dedicated for the use and benefit of the public. It's not a private, it's not private. The roadway is privately maintained. We do bring in flatbed trucks for the tower.
So before you leave that point, so
Here, okay, here's the survey on the, can you turn it the other? Is this
so your lot, the lot where you're placing this is one of the lots that's subject to the plat.
Yes,
And so your position is that the road is for the benefit of anybody who lives in that platted, for all those platted lots?
right, correct.
The plat's available, we can look at the dedication on the plat to see whom the roads were dedicated to.
Well, they probably weren't dedicated to the county, I'm guessing. But I think her argument is that,
It's not,
and there's probably no HOA, is that accurate?
correct. It's not private property is my point.
So this is a plat from 1911.
100-year-old homes like this, like she
And
said.
yes, the right-of-way is clearly platted.
And that is our access, and you see the dirt road on there. And it is the county, we looked up the records while we were in the audience, and that portion of it is shown as privately maintained. So we will have to construct the tower, and we will have to bring in concrete trucks and a flatbed truck to bring in the sections of the tower. We take pictures of the roadway before we start construction, and we take pictures of the roadway when we finish construction, and we repair any damage we have done to the roadway during construction. Once the tower is constructed, the traffic to the tower is very minimal. I've been doing tower work since the late 90s. I used to say it was one light-duty vehicle trip per month per carrier, and this is a 4-carrier pole. But now things have progressed, and now it's more like one trip maybe every 2 to 3 months per carrier. And even that is starting to, the trend is moving away from that because there's a lot of the maintenance on the towers, on the antennas that can be done remotely. So the traffic that comes to the towers for maintenance is going down and not up.
How long will the trucks be coming back and forth during construction?
Construction process, 6 weeks? 6 weeks is usually, we can usually get them up in 6 weeks
Then you'll have one pickup truck every couple of months
per carrier, yes,
per carrier. Okay.
yes. You covered health effects.
How was the
There-
selection made?
On the tower type,
Yes.
that was a decision made jointly between AnthemNet and the landlord. We utilized, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. The decision was made for a monopine to be sensitive to the neighborhood. We decided to use a mitigated tower. That, the speaker said that those branches are plastic. They're not, they're fiberglass. And there is a condition in the conditions of approval that requires us within 15 days to repair or modify or clean up anything that is, any branches that have fallen, any of the branches that have broken, and that's in the conditions of approval. We're not aware of these pine trees being a maintenance problem, but your county has made sure that if it becomes a maintenance problem, we have to fix it in 15 days. And again, those branches are fiberglass and not plastic.
So
Fiberglass is a shortened term. The full term is fiberglass reinforced plastic.
So can I ask you a question on that? So does your lease require that you build a monopine, your lease with the landlord?
No.
So if planning commission or the board were to tell you they don't want a monopine and they'd rather have some other design, that would be perfectly okay with your lease?
It would not violate our lease. Now, we would not want a unipole because that limits the antennas. That messes with our relationship with our carriers.
Yep.
So a monopole, that's a less expensive facility for us to build. That is the carrier's first choice of structure.
And it eliminates any concern for environmental impact that some of the residents have brought up. And some of the residents are saying that the pine would stick out like a sore thumb.
Right.
So.
It's been, I don't expect the residents to believe this, but it's been our experience that the monopole generally ends up just sort of blending into the environment and people don't notice it.
We've seen that too.
I didn't expect the residents to,
But let me, we've also seen in the past other designs like, bell towers, things like that. So I guess my main question to you is the design issue within the purview of solely within the purview of the applicant, planning commission, or the board, or is there something in your lease that restricts your ability as to how this is designed?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Could you also address why this site as opposed to other sites in the area, like how you ended up with this site in your site selection?
I'm going to have Jen Frost come up and talk about that, and while she's coming up, again, we researched the properties in the search area. This happens to be, I think, the largest property in the search area. That was a key factor because a large property allows us to absorb much of the visual impact of the tower on site. So we think we found the best piece of property in the search area for this tower. And given the wetlands on the western portion of it, that was a bonus. That allows for additional screening and buffering. But most of the properties in the search area are encumbered by wetlands or didn't have access or didn't have interested landlords. But Jen, this is Jen Frost, the project manager for AnthemNet.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Frost. My address is 5944 Luther Lane, Suite 725, Dallas, Texas.
You've been sworn?
Yes, I have been sworn. Thank you. Mary summarized everything perfectly as far as reaching a viable site outside of wetlands. outside of any other conservation easements and willing landowners. We were declined by 3 landowners, or other landowners that we contacted never replied to us. Ms. Patterson was the only landowner who was willing to move forward on her 20-acre parcel.
And what was your search circle, or what were the boundaries of where you were searching?
We had about a half-mile radius.
This one?
I think this.
The other one.
This one would be good. Okay. And then
Is that something you can put up on the display?
And while you're getting that loaded up, your code requires that we establish that there are no available structures within our search area on which to locate a tower, and your outside consultant has confirmed that there aren't any available towers or suitable tall structures. But your code doesn't require us to prove that we've found the best site in the search ring. We think we have on this particular case, but that's not part of the analysis.
I understand, but some citizens have commented that there's other viable locations. I want to understand what your thought process was as to how you ended up on this one.
Okay, she's going to show you this. We're going to get this aerial up. Oh, now it's upside down. Is this a pointer?
Is it the white circle?
Yes, that's our search area. Oh, we got some glare.
It looks like the yellow circles is coverages from other towers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the white circle, just to explain for lay people, including me, is that's your gap area? That's the area where you have to have the towers in the white circle to meet your coverage needs?
yes, so there is a red dot in the center of that circle. That is the ideal location for a tower to be located in order to fit into the existing network. We were given a 1/2 mile search radius, which is the white circle shown up on the map. We contacted several property owners within that circle. Like I said, a lot of it is wetlands, conservation, and the green triangle is Ms. Patterson's property with the proposed tower.
And so this is intended to serve what geographic area? I mean, I understand that your search area is 1/2 mile, but what is the geographic area you're trying to serve with this tower?
Yeah, we're going to bring Bill Compton up. He's the RF engineer for Verizon, who is the anchor tenant. Do you want to use any of your maps? Okay.
Hi, William Compton. Address is 7701 East Telecom Parkway, Tampa, and I have been sworn.
Okay, thank you.
We build a network of towers, so this tower does not live and exist on its own. So this location was determined, as has already been stated. You can kind of see those circles coming in from the east and the west, also to the south. This is basically kind of the sweet spot of where we'd want to offload traffic. So this area will not only, this site will not only benefit this area, this search area that's shown on the map, it'll also benefit the entire surrounding area because it offloads all those sites that are currently, I'm glad that the residents are saying they have great service now. As has been stated already, we're trying to get ahead of the demand, and we're trying to offload the entire area.
So part of the reason I'm asking this is because the county just did an RFP to put a tower at Starkey Park, which I think we're close to awarding or leasing. That doesn't alleviate I understand it's not a structure that's up currently, okay, but, so you didn't have to consider it as part of this, but my question is, if it were up, is that a potential viable location or not really? Because it doesn't help this area. That's my question.
It would not affect this area, so that would be a totally separate area that we'd be working on to mitigate traffic in that area as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was what I was going to ask too, and you already kind of covered it. But, people talking about how traffic's great now or how their service is fine now. And I know my limited knowledge of the improved technology with going to 5G and everything, as these speeds increase, then that decreases the radius to which can be served, the areas that can be served. So therefore, I'm assuming as technology advances, we're going to have higher densities of cell phone towers to cover these areas. Am I correct?
Well, typically, the service radius of a cell site is usually predicated on the frequency band that we use. So in the early days when cellular first came out, it was 800 megahertz, which is a fairly low frequency, very low frequency for us now. And then as the FCC auctions off more and more spectrum for wireless usage, that spectrum keeps going higher and higher in frequency. And just due to the physics of RF and RF propagation, it goes less distance. That is correct.
Okay.
So the distance is a function of more of the capacity. We can cover long distances and still provide coverage, but as has already been spoken, coverage only gets you so far. When you want to start using it, we've got a tremendous amount of traffic coming from inside residences now. People are working from home, and they're just trying to use the devices where they didn't necessarily do it before. They pick up they use their landline at home, and then they drive to the office. We have people working from home now that are trying to use the internet service and stuff through our wireless devices.
And there's more wireless internet being used in the home as well. So people that are getting rid of cabled connections and going to wireless connections within the home.
Absolutely, yes.
So could you address the height issue? Because there was at least one of the residents said, why not make it lower? What happens if you make it lower, or why can't you make it lower?
It's just like the lights in this room. There's a reason why they're on the ceiling and not coming from the floor. The higher they go, the bigger area they shine on. The other thing that I want to point out is this is, I believe, a 4-carrier pole. So each carrier that goes on that pole has to go below the one above it, and there's technical reasons for that to keep the frequencies isolated. So basically, every time you put another carrier on, you drop that height 10 feet approximately. So 155, now we're down to 150, so we're 145 feet is going to be the center of our tower, our antennas. Then we're going to be at 135, 125, 115 is going to be actually the lowest, and that's very low for that area. And we also look at the distance to the surrounding sites to make sure the RF energy can get and serve the area that we're trying to serve.
So a lower tower would require more densely location of other towers.
Exactly, exactly.
So more towers.
So can I ask the search, I
Yes,
forgot her
please.
name, I'm sorry. Jennifer Frost, one more question. So I see from your search area that the red dot was sort of the ideal location, and I could see some residents saying, well, that's on 54 where we wanted it. So did you definitely contacted some owners that were at that ideal location and you weren't able to get the tower there?
Yes, that's correct. There is a commercially zoned parcel right at the search ring center. We did reach out to them. I spoke with the gentleman at length. He does not want a tower because he wants to reserve that parcel for other better uses, maybe a hotel or what other application he can use on that property. A lot of the other properties along State Road 54 to the north of it, like I said, were conservation lands covered in wetlands, or they were already too densely built out to where there would be no room for a tower whatsoever. Other properties along 54 were also affected by wetlands, access issues, floodplain, or just not enough space for a tower.
So it wasn't an issue of you weren't willing to pay a higher price. If you had a willing seller, a willing landlord somewhere on 54, you would have done it.
If we had a willing landowner that had available land that wasn't going to be affecting wetlands, yes, we would have paid a higher price.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had a question on the, just the access. Can you kind of take us through the road system as to where you're going to be getting off of 54 and then to that site? Maybe they go back to that county map that was up there.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm trying to find a good map that we'd be able to illustrate for you.
I think we have a map here, it's an aerial map. We can use that, right? That'd be okay, Richard?
Yeah. And a pointer would be great.
Can you see the aerial map that we have up?
Yes.
You can just point, is that a pointer? Just use that to point the direction where you'll access and that kind of thing.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working. I'm trying to orient myself.
You can get closer.
Yeah.
Get around it from the
Okay,
south.
so coming off of,
Yeah, Bela Road.
No, that's actually, I'll get to all of that after.
so.
Oh, no, there's no access.
Oh, it doesn't work on there.
Putting a light on a light.
It's not gonna work.
So you come in here from Sassandra.
Yeah, back
You
up.
can just walk it down from the, or
Back
talk
up
us
a
through
little.
it.
So from State Road 54, come down onto Black Lake Road.
From State Road 54, oh, you got it.
Coming from State Road 54, turning onto Astoria Parkway going south, turning right onto Black Lake Road, turning left onto Chesapeake Drive,
Okay.
and then can you traverse?
Sassandra.
Can you move it?
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to come in from the south end and go
Gotcha.
up north.
That's a long way around.
It is a long way around it.
A little bit more. Chesapeake Drive
Yep.
is this road. Over to Sassandra Lane, up to Roland Drive, up to the site.
Okay. Thank you.
So can I ask a follow-up question? So all of those roads you just mentioned, not all of them, not 54 in Black Lake, but Chesapeake and Roland, all of that entire length of roadway is all part of the same 1911 plat that you have the right to use all those roads?
No.
To our knowledge, those are all public right-of-way.
Yeah, they're paved.
Okay, so is it only Roland north of, what part of Roland is privately maintained?
Bluestone back.
Correct. From what it appears per the Pasco County GIS, from Bluestone and northward is privately maintained, but county-owned.
The last couple hundred feet of Roland.
Okay, so most of that road network you just talked about is county maintained? Okay,
It stops at Balo, and I can confirm that because I did the house at the corner of Balo and Roland. Literally just got its CO a month or two ago.
okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question, and then I'm just thinking those towers, so they're gonna be able to come through there and make the turns and all that. How long are the actual towers they'll be bringing in?
The sections of the tower are going to be brought in on flatbed trucks. There's probably going to be about 4 sections, 25 to 35 feet each in length.
Okay. And I guess, I mean, I'm assuming they'll be able to make those turns. I'm looking at Chesapeake and Sassandra. It looks kind of tight, but,
It is tight,
Do
but
it?
those trucks are able
Are
to
your
make those
trucks-
turns, yes.
Are your trucks any longer than a fire truck?
David?
No.
In the last 2 years, I've done 3 houses on Roland Drive, and they have to deliver trusses to those houses.
With
Those all
semis,
come
yeah.
on flatbed semi-trucks. They can
Okay.
access the
Okay.
street.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Somebody brought up during one of the pieces of testimony that a fire truck wasn't able to access down this road. Is there any truth to that, or is that fallacy?
I would tell you that the road is in rough shape.
Water tankers that come down with the firemen that go down like this with their.
Well,
So,
We,
I mean,
we,
legal-
well, go ahead.
we will have to go through site plan review, and the fire marshal will review our access plan and make sure that the fire marshal can get emergency equipment to that site.
No mail allowed back there.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, and the reason I was asking the question, I wasn't sure if it was a legal question or if it was just because of the condition of the road, but valid point that you have to go through.
I mean,
site
if it got that bad that our emergency vehicles couldn't get on it, our board has sometimes done, what do they call emergency one-time fixes?
Okay.
But it takes, the road has to be really bad for a fire truck to not be able to use it.
I would tell you that the road is clearly substandard, doesn't meet county standards, but I don't think it's not accessible by fire vehicles. Like I said, we've completed three houses on that road in the last couple of years. So we've had concrete trucks, semi-trucks delivering trusses, drywall deliveries, roofing materials.
So we should blame you for the fact that it's all in rough shape?
Like that when we got there. And all of their claims of flooding are true.
Okay.
Any more
Any
questions for us?
More questions? So the style of the tower doesn't matter to you?
Monopine, monopole, one of the two. And between those two, it doesn't matter.
Okay, what about the bell tower?
No. No.
So you'd rather us deny it than to do a bell tower? Is that what you're saying?
We don't think a bell tower is the right mitigating.
Well, that's not my question. I'm just saying, I don't know what the flavor of the board is on it, but I'm just asking you in advance. That may be something that the board wants. So if that's not something you want and that's not acceptable, you
It's
should
not
let us
something we
know,
want.
because we'll just deny it then.
Is it because of a technical reason or cost issue?
Cost, structural, yes.
So it
And
doesn't-
I think it's limiting, Bill, I think it's antenna limiting too. I think it's,
Sat down prematurely. William Compton again. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the FCC keeps auctioning off higher and higher frequency bands. There is a limitation as the higher the wavelength, the less it can penetrate. And that includes anything you put in front of the antennas, any kind of stealthing. So if you put a bell tower or something like that, you're trying to put the antennas behind that, frequencies above 6 gigahertz, which right now we're not technically using any on most of our macro sites, but anything above that frequency band, those materials don't pass through. So we do have ways to mitigate that, but that basically is like a 3M wrap that we put on our very, very high frequency equipment. But again, that's not structural, that's literally just something that just wraps around the front of the antenna just to change the color, like on a light pole or something like that. So yeah, structure types are becoming more and more of an issue to the carriers because of that issue as the higher frequency bands
But
come out.
The monopine doesn't do that?
A monopine does not, no, sir. Because we don't put anything on the antennas themselves. The antennas are masked by the branches that stick out.
Okay? All right, any other questions? All right. Then, do I have a motion?
So I'd move to approve. My personal preference is just the galvanized monopole. I am moved by the gentleman's testimony about the needles on the monopine. That was something new to me. I did not realize that was a plastic material. I think he has a legitimate concern. As I said, I've done 3 houses on this street in the last couple of years. I can tell you Lake Minneola is beautiful. I would hate to see that lake polluted with debris that, if you've ever seen fiberglass that's left out in the sun for years and years and years, eventually it becomes brittle, and I can see his point, that this will chip off, this will get in the lake, and then we've got forever plastics in the lake. And so although the monopole may not be as aesthetically pleasing, although I would tell you that I personally think those monopines look like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
They do stick out.
They may not be as aesthetically pleasing to some people, but I tend to agree with your statement earlier that they tend to blend in the background. There's so many of them around, you don't even notice them. And I have one exception to that, and that's my assistant in my office, lives in an apartment. the monopole's located directly behind her apartment, so you can't help but look out the window and see that. But when you're driving down the highway and it's off in the distance, I think they blend into the background fairly well. So that'd be my motion.
I'd second that, John.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for discussion.
Denise, did you say something?
David, just for the record, I don't vote on these, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I do have a
Unless there's a
question.
tie.
Yeah.
Yes, what, Denise?
So, David, am I allowed to ask the applicant a question?
If you needed to help,
I need help with the monopole because I'm not sure if the lightning rod is going to be the same height on a monopole. I'm saying them say yes, so this will still be the same height. Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to clarify.
if the motion passes, you'd be changing the conditions to say monopole instead of monopine, and you'd remove the maintenance
The
condition.
maintenance condition, yes. I understand. I just wanted to check to see if the height, sometimes a lightning rod is 4 feet instead of 5 or 10 instead of whatever. I wanted to make sure that that was not a change. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for discussion purposes, and I guess just as far as my position goes on this, I guess I'd start out by saying, fortunately or unfortunately, we've all become very dependent on cell phones and cell phone service. And I mean, I'm in a way, I'm troubled by my cell phone anyways, and I wish I could become less reliant on it, trust me. But I'm troubled by the fact that if I'm interpreting what you guys said correctly, your search area radius was half a mile. So are we heading down the path that we're going to have a cell tower every mile in this county? Is that kind of the direction we're heading?
Based on capacity, there are areas where we need sites that close together, but again, it's based on capacity. So in a rural area like this, I don't see that density ever getting down to that type, that close, but it's purely based on capacity. Each one of these cell towers has a set of antennas that can carry a certain amount of traffic. Once the users use that traffic up, the only way we mitigate that is making that service area smaller by what we call cell splitting.
So as population becomes more dense, as development happens, these cell towers become closer and closer together. As a result, we end up with cell towers that are closer and closer to residential lots, closer to existing residential lots. I mean, we're building this, or they're proposing to build this cell tower 100 feet from the property line. I mean, granted, it's screened on one side by a wetland, but it's very, very close to existing residential in this area. That's bothersome to me when I look at the kind of the checklist here and the conditional use, the approval requirements. I mean, one of the things says that the site, there's topics in here that talk about has adequate drainage on the site, as far as one of the conditional use criteria. I don't think it does. I think this is an area that's pretty significantly and pretty frequently floods. I think people brought up, property values, even though there's not legitimate proof that it does affect property values. I haven't heard the applicant say either that it does not. And they could both sit up there probably and claim that, defend their side of the case. So I don't know, this is a hard one. And again, we've all become very reliant on cell phones and technology, and maybe this is just one of the things that we're stuck with dealing with, but I don't know. I think we're headed down a dangerous path here, and I think really everybody's going to be facing where everybody's going to be looking out their back door at one of these things really in the near future. So
Right, let me just, by way of commentary, I think part of the issue here is that this is not a deed restricted community. I mean, I think you probably would not see this happening in a private deed restricted community because the private deed restrictions would probably prevent this landowner from using his site for a cell tower. So I do think some of these older neighborhoods that don't have private deed restrictions are probably more at risk of having I'll call it a rogue landowner, maybe not operating in the same interest of the rest of the neighborhood because he's got no deed restrictions. So it allows this landowner.
Restrictions on the golf course either. We looked at a case where they wanted to be on a golf course a few months ago, and I'm certain that all the homes around that golf course probably had lots of deed restrictions on them.
True, but in that case, most of the homeowners ended up supporting it because they wanted to support the golf course owner.
I mean, we were a lot further than 100 feet away from the existing residences, too. I mean, I look at, two things I looked at when they put that map up there. One, I know there was some discussion here about this cell tower being needed to replace the tower that was removed from the frontage on 54 and Black Lake Road. It doesn't look like that was within that half-mile radius site either, okay? I mean, there appears to be county-owned land that's a half a mile to the west. That's not in their half a mile either, but it's 400 feet from the nearest residence. So I mean, I don't know, that's why I brought up about the spacing between these towers and what's acceptable and what's not. I mean, I really think we're going down a dangerous path here. If these things are required every mile you drive, I mean, that's almost as close as we allow stoplights. I mean, not
Well,
quite.
I don't
but-
think anybody wants cell phone towers in people's backyards. I
Right.
mean, that's, I don't think, but unfortunately, it's a necessary evil of the technology that we're just trying to pick our
That's what I see.
poison.
The problem is, I got my new planning commission laptop, and I'm using wireless internet. I got my cell phone, I got the Rokus on my TV. A lot of people have Wi-Fi thermostats and refrigerators, and, unless we want to go, and I'm not saying I'd be opposed, but a lot of times people tell me your cell phone rang, and I say, well, if it were 1975 and the phone rang and I didn't hear it, I wouldn't even know they called, man. Maybe we'd like to go back to that time, but I don't think we're headed there.
But are we going too fast? I mean, it seems like the antennas aren't keeping up with the frequency and the demand.
The problem is it's not our job to say whether we're going too fast or not. It's driven by economics and by consumer demand and.
So, can I ask the expert a question? So, if this neighborhood had been, I'm assuming it's an older neighborhood that's not served by fiber, so if it was a newer neighborhood that had fiber service, is it probably gonna put less demand on your cellular network?
In
There's
some
more of
ways,
the
yes.
homes that are on fiber?
In some ways, yes. If there's fiber to the house and that particular resident has purchased that service and then they have Wi-Fi, then they have it in the house. But again, for wireless services, most of those, I wouldn't say most of, a lot of those calls are outside. Something happened, you're driving your car. So a lot of our service is not confined to Wi-Fi. If Wi-Fi was the answer, we would.
I'm just saying, I have fiber in my home, I'm assuming you do too.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're putting the same demands on the cellular network as Mr. Moody over there, if he's doing everything through
No,
wireless.
actually, I still have old-fashioned cable for my Wi-Fi in the house.
But that's a good follow-up question. So, if as infrastructure in the area improves with new development and more people potentially go wired through the fiber and things like that, is there the potential that it would reduce demand on this tower that you put up and possibly necessitate the decommissioning of it?
I wish I could speculate.
Yeah, I mean, but it's possible, correct? I mean,
I can't say it's not possible. Let me put it that way.
so.
My guess is that the fiber companies in a neighborhood like this are probably not gonna come in and retrofit it with fiber. I mean, typically when you see fiber, it's the newer neighborhoods that they have it installed when they.
And that's correct. I mean, but you have newer developments that are coming online in the area, and those are probably going to have that infrastructure built into them. So,
I guess my point is that I get your point, but I'm not sure that fiber is going to be the solution for an area like this because it wasn't put in when all these homes were developed. I agree with your point. I think that
At least
fiber
for those
could
homes,
reduce
yeah.
to maybe counter some of what Jamie's saying, which is that we're gonna have towers every 100 feet, because I think, because fiber, I mean, does reduce demand on the cellular network.
So you're slave to cable company, or you're slave to the fiber company. Or you can
or
go
you're
to
slave to
T-Mobile and you can get 5G wireless internet. that
But you need
can
more
take-
towers.
Well, yeah.
yeah, or you're slave to the towers, right? That's right.
Okay, well, I'm gonna
So if you
go-
live in a non-rural area with all of that density, then you're going to have a lot more concentration of towers. I guess we'll have to think
So,
about
Mr.
that.
Doherty,
as
I
we-
volunteer to be a slave to fiber. I won't,
You're gonna-
so I can reduce my tower
Sacrifice.
consumption. How about
Gotcha.
that?
I got you.
I'm
We're
not
talking about
saying-
reducing carbon footprint. We didn't talk about reducing tower consumption.
I made the motion to approve but
We have a
I'm not saying I
motion.
like it.
Yeah, we're,
Same here.
we have a motion, we're under discussion. And what I can say, is, since I haven't really spoken yet on this issue, is that and it really, in spite of the first speaker that came up, and although he was very pleasant for about the first 15 seconds, I too have reservations like you do, Jamie, about the tower and the neighborhood and how it affects the neighborhood. I think, although it's not in a it's not in a newer neighborhood that has HOA protections and things like that, I think we do have a responsibility as a board to try to protect the people who live in that area. And the other thing that I don't like is I don't like it when a company comes and says, oh, we don't want to do that because it's going to cost more money. I think how it affects the neighbors is more important to me than whether it's going to cost more money or not. If it's going to cost more money, then let's find a different location. So I'm not going to vote to support the motion. I think it's something that we obviously need. You know, I use a cell phone just like everybody else. But I think we need to make our best efforts. I'm not sure that all the best efforts were made here to find a better location. I think the fact that it's 100 feet from a residence and about the flooding issues, I'm concerned about all those things. I'm concerned about pollution, and I think that's why Mr. Moody made the motion he did. I mean, that would be a minimum for me, but I just want to let the board know in advance that I'm not going to support the motion for those reasons. So, anyway, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion?
I'll just chime in a little bit. One of the things I wanted to mention too is we have 1,000 people a day are moving into Florida, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. It's just what we call growing pains, and it's not easy. And with all that comes the cell service demands. One more thing is just that, just personally speaking, I had a Withlacoochee gentleman come and he said, we're going to put a electric pole in your yard. I said, I don't want an electric pole in my yard, but they put it in there. And I was arguing with him, and he said, you'll get used to it. And I thought, that's pretty rude. But you know what? I got used to it. So I'm not saying it's, and I'm not saying you'll get used to it, but you drive by every day and you see telephone poles and you don't even look at them, and it's just becoming part of life, I guess. And that's all.
All right, well, let's see, are you voting on this one, Richard?
He doesn't think so.
Looks like it might be
Which
Eddie.
maybe
He
going in
doesn't
that
think so.
direction. I think Richard sees the handwriting on the wall there.
He's holding the ace card.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. We've had discussion. Is there any more discussion? Any more questions? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and let's have a roll call.
Roll call, yeah.
Mr. Jamie Girardi?
Nay.
Mr. Derek Fontlitz?
Aye.
Mr. Peter Hansel? Sorry. Mr. John Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Richard Schnell, are you?
Not
Wait, you
voting
gotta wait
yet.
till there's a tie before you let him vote.
And Chairman Charles Craig?
Nay.
All right, so there's a
Motion,
tie.
So it's 2-2, so Mr. Chenal can vote to break the tie.
I'll vote nay.
Okay, the motion's denied. All right, there you go.
Democracy at work.
Democracy only works if people participate.
That's right. And Mr. Chair, I have to depart.
Okay.
Still have a quorum, right? Yes. Okay.
Well, yeah, now Richard's in on it, everything. You know how important your seat was.
That's why.
Did you, so the item is over? That's
what Chris sent me.
Stick around. So this.
Yeah. Please pass along to the first speaker.
Yes.
So if he comes in again,
I should probably say that
I'm Mr. A-hole. I'm not just an a-hole.
I should probably say that this does go to the Board of County Commissioners, and that is scheduled for the Board of County Commissioners.
Please
on
listen up.
January 23rd, 2024 at 1:30 in this same location. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that.
Okay, so if my colleagues can please bring up the PowerPoint for item P10. All right, so item P10 is, as you've seen me present before, is the package amendments for, in this case, 2023. Believe it or not, it is Amendment 67 to the Land Development Code, which means that 67 amendments since we adopted the restated Land Development Code in 2000, well, it was adopted in 2011, became effective in 2012. So Amendment 67, and this is PDD 240088. So these proposed amendments were presented to the horizontal roundtable and interested parties meeting on October 18th, 2023. I'm going to try as best as I can to go through each and every one of them. So the first modification is Chapter 100, General Provisions, Section 108.2. This is adding Section G, which is in the enforcement section, failing to comply with a recorded deed restriction that was utilized to secure a county development approval or county mobility fee exemption waiver, that should say waiver, not waive, waiver or reduction. So that's something that we're adding. As you've seen throughout the time, you've approved a lot of voluntarily agreed upon deed restrictions. We need to have a enforcement mechanism. Next section is Chapter 300 Procedures, Section 305 Neighborhood Meeting. It clarifies when the neighborhood meeting should be conducted. It should be conducted after the application is deemed complete for content, not after the application is accepted for review. So a seller accepts an application for review. Someone will, I had the situation this year that someone conducted a neighborhood meeting. What was shown at the neighborhood meeting was completely different than what was accepted after content was complete. So we want to make sure that that's clarified in our LDC. So the next section is Chapter 400, Permit Types and Applications, 403.7B4. D, mass grading submittal information. There's a Scrivener's error there. Should be 200 feet, not 20 feet.
How do we know that's a Scrivener's error?
I had the actual technical team take a look at that and state that it should have been 200 feet, and we looked at other sections of the other write-ups of the old land development code, compared it to the pre-2012, and it says 200 feet, not 20 feet. So it's a mistake. The next section is Chapter 400, Permit Types and Applications, Section 403.10, Landscape Plan. This basically adds the effective final determination of denial. So if the Planning Commission denies this is in a wrong section, actually. I apologize for that.
Yes.
I apologize. The one thing doesn't go with the other. It's actually 407.2E variances, effective final determination. So this is something that actually happened at the Planning Commission. As you saw, a variance came through, was denied by the Planning Commission. The person reapplied for the same variance and came to the Planning Commission maybe like 2 months after. So basically, this follows the same process that the special exception section follows, that if a special exception gets denied by the Planning Commission, the same special exception cannot be applied for within a year, a different special exception within 6 months. So we're changing the LDC to clarify that it's following that similar path. The same thing with alternative standards. So if the Planning Commission denies an alternative standard, then the same alternative standard for the same property cannot be applied for a period of 12 months, a different alternative standard for 6 months. And I apologize that there's that mistake in the PowerPoint. The next section is Chapter 500, 522.5A, ECMPUD, Purpose and Intent. There's a Scrivener's error there that basically says that it's the Emergency Communications Division, Future Land Use Classification. Well, it's the EC, Employment Center, Future Land Use Classification. Following section is Section 500, 522.9E, 3F, 2A, V for CCMPUD. You're going to see this change throughout in many sections, which is basically, well, this one is a true Scrivener's error. The fire rescue is not a division, it's a department, so we just changed it to fire rescue department. This next one is the one that you're going to see repeatedly throughout. One of our county attorneys, or senior senior assistant county attorneys in our county attorney's office is making some modifications to the code of ordinances having to do with fire marshal. So he's asked me so that they match. So what's going to be stated in the code of ordinances and in the land development code match. So you're going to see replacement of fire marshal capitalized to county fire marshal in small case. And you'll see that throughout. That's in these two, it's 500, section 500, 522.9J2B in street design, and in 522.9 R4I on on-site parking. Next one is Chapter 600, Overlay and Special Districts. This is the Northeast Rural Protection Overlay District. The change is to the fire department access road to all fire department access roads. Following change is Chapter 800, Natural and Cultural Resource Protection, Section 805.4A, Impacts to Wetland Mitigation, and 805.6, Restrictions on Post-Development Wetland and Upland Buffers within residential lots and non-residential parcels. So throughout, there's kind of like some scrivener, so the word post, it's post-development, that's what we're adding. And then actually the true meat is adding that for developments that are not required to plat, the post-development Category 1 wetland and upland buffer within the non-residential parcel shall be conveyed by the applicant as a conservation easement. And I'm being told by my colleagues that that's something that we're seeing a lot of alternative standards not waivers, variations to the code on, and this will, codify the current practice. And this is actually also in your conservation element of the comprehensive plan. Chapter 900, Development Standards, Section 901.2E, Transportation Corridor Management, Density and Intensity and Development. This is an unintended consequence from Land Development Code Amendment 45. When we removed the dedication waiver, some of those numbers got switched up, so we fixed the numbering in that section. Chapter 900, Development Standards, Section 901.6D2, Street Design and Dedication. This is another one where replacing fire marshal with county fire marshal. Chapter 900, Development Standards, 904.3C, Fire Protection. It replaces county fire marshal with Pasco County Fire Marshal with county fire marshal, and it adds county to fire rescue department. Similar thing in Chapter 900, 907.1D6, on-site parking, loading, stacking, and lighting. Following section is very similar to what I was talking about in the neighborhood meeting section, which is, this one is in 1002.14, wireless communications facilities. It changes time from the time application is received to when the application is deemed complete for review for time frames. And it also modifies 1002.14A and B to 1002.14B and C. This is a Scrivener's error when we made changes to the Pasco County Code of Ordinances in 2017 or so. That should have been moved over. Next item is Chapter 100, Miscellaneous Structured Regulations, Section 1003.3, Gates, Fences, and Walls, Residential Requirements. Clarifies that the 4-foot maximum fence height in front yard applies to corner and double frontage lots. This came as a result of a code enforcement item at the court level, and we are required to change that, or make that clarification, sorry. Chapter 1300, Concurrency, Mobility, and Impact Fees, Section 1302.2 F2K. It actually adds full-time as a qualifier because this is basically how you determine small business. We wanted to make sure that it was not counting just the part-time employees, because it might have pushed them over the limit. All right, next section. I think we're getting to the end here. Chapter 1300, Concurrency, Mobility, and Impact Fees, 1302.2 F2E, Mobility Fees, Calculation of Mobility Fees and Administration. It adds non-eligibility for the affordable housing rate if the project has invoked the Live Local zoning preemption or property tax exemption in the Live Local Act. Also adds 2F for moderate income affordable housing rate, which is equivalent to the TOD rate, and adds non-eligibility for affordable housing rate if the proposed project has invoked the land use zoning preemption or property tax exemption in the Live Local Act. It also removes, right, that's it, okay.
Denise, can I just
Okay,
make one comment? You got a
Absolutely.
grammar issue, and this affects all of the ones where you added the
Okay,
nonprofit language.
okay.
I don't know how to call it, but there's a line, I'll start with, it says, an applicable federal, state, and local income and expense criteria for affordable housing. It says, and must be constructed by a registered nonprofit. I think you're missing the word and before B, and be sold or leased to
Okay, so I'm gonna start where it would, because this affects several sections.
Right,
So
the
let's
same
start at
errors.
1302.2, right,
Yeah,
David? Okay.
it's, so if you start with 1302.2F,
Okay,
2F,
yes.
there's, and this is a very long paragraph, so, but I'm starting with the language that says, I don't know where you want me to start, but do you see the language that says, "An applicable federal, state, and local income and expense criteria"? Do you see that?
Yes, foregoing definition and applicable federal,
Yes,
state, and
okay.
local income and expense criteria for affordable housing.
Okay, I think that should be a comma after housing,
Okay,
strike the word "and,"
okay,
then must be constructed by a registered nonprofit, comma, and then add the word "and" before B.
okay. Okay,
You need to make that same change.
yes, I need to make that same change to.
Everywhere we have that same language.
Exactly, so to 1302.3, 1302.4, 1302.5, 1302.6, and then the subsections where that change would be required. Okay, will do.
So noted.
And then I lumped all these together because they're all basically the same. So this is modifying 1302.3C5, school impact fees, imposition exemptions, 1302.4C3, parks and recreation impact fees, imposition, section 1302.5C5, library impact fees, imposition exemptions, 1302.6C6, fire combat and rescue services fees, imposition. On all of these, we're adding or partial exemptions. It adds affordable housing exemption, no school impact fee or the other impact fees are due if the unit's affordable to a family with a median income that does not exceed 80% of the median income, so on and so forth, as you could read through the paragraph, and making the changes that David stated, which is to add a comma after the word housing, remove the and before the word must, and then add a comma before the words be sold, or after the comma on nonprofit. And we're asking that you find the proposed ordinance amendment consistent with the Pasco Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. This is scheduled for the Board of County Commissioners' first reading. Will be on 12/5 of '23 at 1:30 in Newport Richey, and the adoption is scheduled for January 9th, '24 at 1:30 in Dade City.
So Denise, I think you may have missed one change in your summary,
Okay.
unless I just missed it quickly. But this also clarifies that you don't get the TOD or T&D rate in mobility fees if you invoke Live Local.
Right, that's correct.
I don't know if that was in your summary.
I did say that.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
then I missed it. Sorry, I missed it.
Well, the TOD, so is there a, so the T, the
There's a
T.
TND one
TND, okay, I
You-
didn't say that part. TND, if invoke Live Local. I didn't go to TND.
Only a one sausage meeting?
Maybe we're just getting fired up on the ordinance, David.
All right, so any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the one that concerns me most has to do with the limitation on variances, and believe it or not, being the ringleader for that particular case, but the variances and alt standards.
Okay.
So I absolutely understand why this is being proposed.
Yes.
And in fact, I think I remember during that case asking if
Asking,
we
why are we
denied,
here?
right, or
Why are we
will he
even
be able
here?
to come back?
Right.
And then next thing we knew, he did show back up.
Yes.
So I get that, and I think it's traditional throughout my career. I've seen all kinds of counties and municipalities that have this limitation on applying for a variance for you know, this blackout period of 12 months or so. So that's not out of the norm. My concern, though, is if we look back at his case, he had a 5-foot encroachment into the front setback, and at one point we were talking about, well, can he cut the front of 5 feet of the front of the house off and make it work? We didn't think we could, and that guy didn't think he could, but what if he would have come back and said, you know, I can't cut 5 feet off of the house, but I can cut 4.5 feet off of the house and make this work. Can I have a 6-inch setback variance instead of a 5-foot variance from the
So wouldn't that be a
setback
different type of
requirement?
variance?
But I think it
With
says
6
any
months?
variance on
That would be a
the-
6-month prohibition as
That would
opposed
be a
to a 1-year.
6-month
But
prohibition.
So,
typically, though, that if, the way this normally works is, if planning commission says, hey, have you thought about a lesser variance, typically the applicant will ask for a continuance, go investigate whether they can do it. This doesn't stop that process. So
Okay,
most
that's
applicants can avoid what you're talking about, and we often encourage them. In fact, sometimes the chairman says, we're either gonna continue this or you risk a denial. I mean, so
good.
So most applicants that know what they're doing, not saying he didn't, but I'm just saying, the Barbara Wilhites of the world and Clark Hobbies of the world would say, I would like a continuance so that I can investigate whether I can do 4 feet or 7 feet or whatever, and then it comes back on a future agenda.
so I discussed that with one of them, former. And we both were of the same opinion. I'm not quite sure where I come down a little on the fence on this issue, is that we think that this is good to stop the bad actors from doing bad acts. What our concern is that we have the unintended consequence of stopping good actors from solving problems. In her case, we were talking about a park, open space for a park. I think that's still out there. And so maybe someone comes back and says, well, I can't provide 100 by 100 open play area, but I can do 95 by 95, but we'd already turned down an alt standard. Then they're kind of foreclosed from that opportunity. And I hear what David, I'm putting a lot of weight to what you said. I mean, in some ways that satisfies but I can see those,
Can I just make one more point?
instances
Yeah,
where
can I-
someone,
yeah.
of course.
One more point. So, in the particular case you're talking about, it did end up resolving itself. It was through the appeal process. No, so because you can't appeal still, and the board, you can work out maybe a compromise before you get to the board on appeal. So there is that also. So even if you weren't smart enough to continue, and you get the denial, there's still one more step before, at least for this body, before that you can go through the appeal process.
Yes, and we both agreed that an applicant for a variance or an alt standard does have the right to appeal a denial by the planning commission. Although, in theory, the way the appeal works is that the board is only reviewing the decision made by the planning commission. They're not making new findings of fact. They're not.
They can't consider new facts, but they could
right.
come to a different decision. And in fact, in the case that we talked about, they did come to a different decision. And they approved the variance with a bunch of conditions, which they're allowed to do under our code. They just can't hear new factual testimony, but they came to a different result than the planning commission.
How dare they?
And by the way, in the interim, the applicant met with the neighbors and.
Yes, yeah, I followed the case all the way to its end.
So what I'm saying is, it's not like it's foreclosing that ability to, I think part of the reason that Denise and I talked about adding this code is because if you had a really bad actor, somebody could just keep doing, every 2
I
weeks,
agree.
you'd be submitting the same application, and you'd be flooded with, you'd be
And I would
you'd be
tell you
denying the
that
same application every 2 weeks.
in most municipal and county codes that I've worked with, they have some similar blackout period, as I'll call it, for reapplying for a variance. I agree, this is not out of the norm. and I will tell you that I'm reasonably satisfied with your answer, but that's all I want to make sure is that we don't over-limit somebody. So in the if I understand this, in the variance section, if it's a different request, it's only a 6-month
That's correct.
waiting period?
Yes, and I do want to also clarify that for the alternative standards section, that's just alternative standards that are heard by the planning commission.
Yes.
So there wouldn't be like that park alternative standard, that's a staff approval, and then it would be appealed or whatever. So these are just like the alternative standards.
So
that
how
the-
would that work? So, I don't want to get into that specific
So these are
case
like
'cause it's
basically
still
signs is
open.
pretty much what you're going to
So,
be dealing with.
A case, they come on appeal of a staff alternative standard determination, and then they're denied by planning commission.
And
Are
go to the
they,
board.
are they
I don't think it's subject to this.
subject? Okay.
No,
You don't
they
think
appeal
so?
to the board.
Now, in that case, if it's a third party, there's a limited window they have to appeal.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think.
I understand that.
So presumably, once they've appealed once, I'm not sure they could get another appeal and still meet the time limit.
Right.
And that's to protect the applicant, because you don't want to have the applicant subject to 30 appeals. So we put a time limit on when they can even file an appeal.
Yeah, I understand that. I just
But
want,
I mean, I get your concern, but I think the chair is pretty good about kind of signaling to the applicant, hey, you may want to continue.
Just a suggestion.
Sometimes he's a little more blunt than that.
And I would say the good actors are gonna get it, and they'll, follow along.
Exactly. And then, one last one, and I think this one goes to Jamie, the mass grading. I'm not necessarily, 20 seems a little light to me, 200 seems a little heavy. I just was kind of your thought.
I think that's in line with what they require for other things, though,
Okay.
on your plan.
And I would tell you that that actually is different on a site-by-site basis. There's some places where you might need 400 feet of off-site topography to figure out
Right.
how things drain, and there's other places where
That's
you
true.
don't need 4 inches. That's, you gotta put a number, that's fine.
Mhm.
We just gotta get the surveyors to do it.
Okay. Anything else then, Denise?
That's it. That's what I've got for this. I don't want you to adjourn, though, after you move-
Okay.
hopefully move this forward.
Is there anybody else here to speak on this? I hope not. No. Okay, so we have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? There you go.
Unanimous.
How easy that was.
Thanks, school
Yeah.
board.
So I do want to say one last thing, because this is our last planning commission meeting before, we won't see each other until December, so we want the planning and development department, and I'm sure everybody here can speak on their behalf. We want to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving with you and your family, and
Thank you.
I'm sure that, at least I do, I'm grateful to you at the Thanksgiving table, so.
Well, the feeling is mutual, I can say
Yes.
that.
Thank you.
You guys do a terrific job, and that's the one thing I look forward to every time I come to this meeting is working with each of you. And I'm sure these guys are the same way.
I thought it was the beef jerky.
Well, I was trying to keep that a secret.
And
Based
being
on some
called
of
those
the testimony
expletives that
today
you were
here,
called
you can
today.
try a new experiment to.
Yeah,
cook
you
your
know,
turkey. You set it under the cell phone antenna.
I've never heard those kind of words before. Right.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Denise. You guys really do a great job, honestly. I'm proud of you. Proud to be associated with you. So. All right, so motion to adjourn?
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks for the beefsteak.
No problem. I'm glad it was only a one beef.
waterways and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly into our lakes and rivers, creating an unhealthy environment for fish, waterfowl, and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other discharges are illegal. If you suspect an illicit discharge, please contact Pasco County Department of Public Works at 727-834-3611.
You're listening to the Pasco Podcast with Mike Carballa. Welcome to Season 3 of Pasco Podcast, a series about leadership and public service. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the nearly 600,000 people of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we're able to bring you this podcast. This podcast is designed to help public servants build leadership skills and leverage them for success by sharing the experiences of our peers.
Hi, I'm Mike Carballa, and welcome to our 36th episode of Pasco Podcast. November 15th is a busy day this year. We're celebrating two things here in Pasco County: America Recycles Day and GIS Day. In Pasco, we have two very dedicated teams focusing on each of these things. And believe it or not, they even sometimes work together to serve you, the citizens of Pasco County. So joining us today is Solid Waste Director Justin Ressler and Geographic Information Services Manager Jeremy Edwards. So Jeremy, Justin, thanks for joining us today. Let's just start by learning a little bit about each one of you. So Jeremy, give us a little bit of about your background and your journey to Pasco County.
All right. I moved to Pasco in 5th grade. We moved to Lacucci from Tampa.
Okay.
So I've spent most of my life on the east side of the county. I went to Pasco Comprehensive High School, which is now Pasco High. I thought, I don't want to be in Pasco anymore. Let's go somewhere else. So I moved back to Tampa, started school, went to USF, got my master's there in geography.
Okay.
Decided that really Tampa is not where I need to be. I missed Pasco and I wanted to come home. And this is the place where, I started, and I wanted to find a use for my skills in the place that made me feel comfortable growing up. So I came to the county 17 years ago.
17, wow.
And I started as an analyst. I was the first analyst, actually, that they had for GIS in the county before they were CAD technicians. So they didn't even have a GIS actual position in the books until I started. And I moved my way up to supervisor and then manager. Along the way, we took addressing in from a mainframe, put it on a map, which caused all kinds of trouble. And since then, we've just been growing our business from the printed map to the 24 hours always available data that is publicly available now.
And it's data that we can't live without. I mean, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't just go click. I'm a very visual person. And so when I just sit back and I look at the tools that you guys have created, and really literally created in this county, because, I happen to know we happen to have been just digitally challenged even 17 years ago. It's absolutely amazing. And I had a great conversation too with some other folks just even before coming here today on new maps and how we're actually going to be pushing to have more current data more frequently, just given the pace of growth here. And so I can't imagine what we would do without it.
Yeah, when we started, there were 6 of us in GIS, and now we have 50 desktop licenses and about 100 field workers that are all working in GIS. We never thought we would be able to maintain that load. And we're about to get new licensing that's going to unleash it to the rest of the county.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
we'll come back to that there in just a second. So Justin, how about you? Talk to us a little bit about your journey, where you come from and how you came here to Pasco County.
Sure. So how does one become a garbage man? So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I went to the University of Florida, studied environmental engineering. I think like most 18-year-olds, you pick a major based on what you think it is. And so I thought I was going to go hiking. That's not what ended up happening. So kind of got into it, learned a lot more about all the different environmental fields, got an opportunity to start working in solid waste, just met a lot of great people, got to learn a lot, got to face a lot of different challenges. And so just kind of continued on that path, hung around in Gainesville for a long time, ended up getting my PhD in environmental engineering, working on a number of issues related to landfills and waste energy. Was out in the private sector for a couple of years and then landed here in Pasco and been here about 6 years.
Now, has it been 6 years?
It's been 6 years.
Oh my
yes.
goodness gracious. It feels like 6 minutes. I gotta tell you, that's great. Justin too, getting into I'm an environmental engineer also, right? So what steered you towards the landfill? I kind of focused on the water side of the house. You're kind of on that solid waste side. What got you into that?
Really, I think it was just the unique set of problems that that there are in solid waste and some of the challenges that we kind of have to work through. And it's such an important resource, right? And everybody puts it out by the curb and it goes away, and then you don't really think about it, right? But there's a lot of men and women behind the scenes working hard to make sure that it's handled in the most efficient way possible, the most environmentally protective way possible. And it's a pretty complex and complicated industry once you get into the details.
Yeah, it really is, really is. But I think it's fun. It's all intriguing to me, but I might be a little nerdy on that. So Jeremy, let's talk about GIS Day, right? So we talk about Geography Awareness Week, and in its simplest form, we know that GIS blends geography with data, and you create real world applications for us to leverage and use that data. So talk about what that looks like here in Pasco County.
In Pasco, what we've done is we've been able to make web browsers. For the most part, that's how most people consume our data. And the data goes out through a web server. But before all that, it starts in a database. So for a lot of people in GIS, when you see data on the screen, you think it's a map. My mom says, "What is that?" I'm like, "Okay, when you see Google Maps, you go to the other side of the screen. That's my job." And
Sure.
and so what GIS really is it's a set of rows in a database that have data attached to it, and we can query those, and we can do things with them. We can analyze it, and it's more than just a printed representation. So when you're working with GIS, you have to be a jack of all trades, which is kind of why we're kind of unique in
Okay.
our environment, because you have to know some programming, you have to know some SQL, you have to know some design concepts, and you have to know how to lay out on paper. You have to know how to keep a server running. So
Well, beyond that, you got to be smart enough too to know what the average person is going to be looking for and how to make it intelligible to
because
people, right?
if we give them too much, and the problem that we have a lot of times is we're so used to seeing and knowing what we know that we have to